World War II by Maeve Garcia. What was it? What was the Second World War? World War II started on September 1st, 1939 through September 2nd, 1945. Almost 6 years exact. It was a war between more than 30 countries in the world. There were two major sides, Allied and Axis powers. World War II started after World War I when a German man who had lots of ideas on how to lead and use people's anger against them. Adolf Hitler was the main leader for Germany and had complete control. Hitler was what we know as a dictator. He took control of people getting in their heads and blaming the effects of World War I on the Jews. I don't know much about how he manipulated people into believing this madness, but he made up lies and fake news so that everyone would believe him. How did it start? On September 1st, 1939, Adolf Hitler invaded Poland, attacking the country. 2 days later, war was declared by France and Great Britain. Hitler thought that there was only one way to gain living space, to make the ultimate race. Hitler thought that there should only be one race, not in just Germany, but the entire world. Germany and the Soviet Union signed the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, which meant no military action was to be made against these two countries. This worried surrounding countries. Two sides. As always, there are more than one side to a story. And in this war, the two main sides were the Allied and Axis powers. The Allied powers consisted of Great Britain, the United States, China, and the Soviet Union. The Axis powers consisted of Germany, Italy, and Japan. One wanted to control the world, and the other wanted to stop them no matter what. Allied powers. Allied powers, FABS, or FABS, was not immediately in an alliance. It started with Britain, then in 1940, Hungary joined, and in 1941, Yugoslavia joined, and in total there were about 30 countries in the Allied powers. The Allied powers started after Germany invaded Poland in 1939. The Allied powers were the ones who ended up winning the war, so they must have had great generals and soldiers. Axis powers. The Axis powers, JIGS, or JIGS, were the ones who started World War II, so technically, Germany was. But since Germany was in an alliance with other countries, they joined the war to keep the alliances. The Axis powers had the lead in the beginning of the war, but at the end, when the U.S. used the atom bomb, nothing could be done. The Holocaust. Could you imagine waking up every day in fear of being captured and killed? Well, millions of people did. When people think of one major event that took place during World War II, they might think of a couple things, like the Holocaust. The Holocaust was a horrible time in German and Jewish history. The Germans gathered over 6 million Jews and put them in concentration camps, as in camps that you wait to die in. They would go into gas chambers without any masks and suffocated. Sometimes they were told that they were going to be taking showers, but instead, it was just gas. They even put them in crowds and used them as target practice. Over 6 million Jews died during World War II. Today, there are tons of Holocaust remembrance sites and museums. There is even a museum in Amsterdam where you can visit the annex where Anne Frank and her family and friends hid from the Germans. In effort to stop the deaths, many people tried their best to stop all the camps that millions died in. Although it didn't work, people appreciated the effort that people put in just to help others. We also need to recognize them more because some of them died just to help other humans who are being mistreated. At the end of the war, all the camps were taken down, and those who were left were freed. After effect. Today, people are still tracking down former Nazis and punishing them for their crimes. They are also trying to find the people who ran the camps. They are putting them in prison. Some of them who were found not in the U.S. have been punished with death. What led the U.S. to join? The U.S. tried to stay out of the war the best they could, but after they received the Zimmerman telegram, they had to join. The telegram said that if Mexico joined the war, that they would do anything they could to get Texas back from the U.S. The Zimmerman telegram was sent by Germany to Mexico. It was accidentally decoded by Britain and then sent to the United States. Another factor in joining the war was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Japan bombed the Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The U.S. was so upset. Japan bombed just to try to make the U.S. join the war. Another key event was the sinking of the British ocean liner the Lusitania. This was sunk by a German U-boat. After 128 Americans were killed, the U.S. was trying their hardest just to stay out of the war. Axis versus Allied. Well, there were too many battles to count, but the majority of the battles were won by the Allied powers. France won the most with a grand total of 1,115 wins. Then, the British with 1,105. And then, finally, the United States with 833 wins. Although so many people thought that the Allies would lose because Germany was thought to have the most powers. But the Allies did everything they could to try and defeat the Axis powers, because if the Axis powers did win, then everything would have been changed from how it is now. What if? What if is something that can go such a long way. What if we said, what if the Axis powers had won? If the Axis powers had won, they most likely would have either split the power or fought each other for the power. If they had fought, then Germany would most likely have taken control and then taken the world. If Hitler had not died and the U.S. had not used the atom bomb, then the whole world war would have been different from what it was. But those things did happen. So there is no thinking about what could have happened. It's not what if, but what is. We are in the present, not the past, not the future. We are where we are right now. The end of the war. Everyone thought the war would end after Hitler died, but it went on for at least another 5 months, until the U.S. finally used the atom bomb on Japan in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945 at 9:15 a.m. After hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed or died months after because of the exposure to excess radiation. Then, on September 2nd, 1945, Japan finally surrendered. Germany was blamed for most of the damage and starting the war. They lost tons of land and money. The Paris Peace Treaties were signed to end World War II. It took years for everyone to recover from the war. Families that had lost loved ones, cities that were destroyed, people who had lost their homes, and farmers that had their farms ruined. All took so long to recover. Many people look back to find relatives that fought in the war to learn more about their history. Conclusion. World War II was a tragic time in history. It hurt so many people, both physically and mentally. The world was damaged, and so many people turned their back on each other. But the worst part was all the deaths. Millions of people died fighting for our rights as a human. People died protecting us from those who wanted to control us and the world. We are all so grateful that it ended and that we stopped Germany from trying to control the world. We appreciate everyone who fought for us and died for us. We thank those who survived and those who have died.